This is a fictional story, created for inspiration and reflection. Any resemblance to real persons is coincidental. He had a gift that could stop a room. He buried it for 20 years. And not one person, not a single soul, ever knew. Adam woke up at 4:47 in the morning. Not because an alarm went off, not because something was wrong. He woke up the way a man wakes up when his whole body is quietly accepted that this is life now. Same ceiling. Same gray light through the same window. Same silence sitting in the room like a piece of furniture he had stopped noticing years ago. He sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. Just sat there, the way he did every morning. Not thinking about anything in particular. Not feeling anything strong enough to name. Just existing in that in-between space before the day starts asking things of you. Outside, a delivery truck rolled slowly down the street. That low, heavy sound that belongs to the hours before the world wakes up and starts pretending everything is fine. Adam listened to it until it faded. Then he stood up, walked to the kitchen, and made his coffee. Laced his boots, picked up his bag. Before he walked out the front door, he stopped. He always stopped. Right there at the end of the hallway was a closet door. Nothing dramatic about it from a distance. Just a door. But anyone who looked carefully would notice something. The wood around the frame was clean. The handle had no dust on it. In an apartment where everything else carried the honest wear of years, scuffed floors, a tired couch, a kitchen table with an uneven leg, that one door looked almost tended to. Protected in a quiet way that asked no questions and offered no explanations. A small padlock held it shut. Adam looked at it for a few seconds. The same look he gave it every morning. Not anger, not grief, exactly. Just a look. The kind of person gives something they made a decision about a long time ago and stopped arguing with. And then he walked out, and the closet stayed locked. Same as yesterday. Same as the day before. Same as every single morning for the past 11 years in this apartment. Adam was 38 years old. He worked as a shift supervisor at a large warehouse on the edge of town. The kind of job that is hard on the body and steady on the paycheck. He was good at it. Showed up on time. Never caused problems. His coworkers trusted him the way people trust a wall. Not because it is exciting, but because it is always exactly where it is supposed to be. His coworker Leon, a big cheerful man who laughed too loud and meant everything he said, once told him at lunch, "Man, I feel like you got a whole other life somewhere. You too calm, too quiet. Regular people got more noise than you." Adam smiled. Nothing hidden about me. Just tired. Leon laughed and went back to his sandwich. But Leon was not entirely wrong. Adam had spent 20 years building a life that asked nothing of the deeper parts of him. No social media. No community events. No gatherings that required him to be seen in any way that went past his job title and his steady, reliable surface. He always had an excuse ready, always something believable and calm. Nobody poussed. Nobody asked twice. People accepted the version of Adam he offered because it was easy and consistent, and gave them no reason to look further. He had become very good at being ordinary on purpose, and the closet stayed locked. To understand that closet, you have to go back 20 years. Back to when Adam was 18, back to when the thing inside him was still alive and free and had not yet learned to be afraid. He had never taken a single music lesson. What he had was an old acoustic guitar his uncle left behind when he moved away, a second-hand thing. Worn and cracked along the body, strings gone dull, from years of sitting untouched. Most people would have thrown it out without a thought. Adam picked it up one afternoon, out of pure curiosity, and something happened that he still cannot fully explain. His hands knew what to do. Not perfectly, not the way trained musicians know, but with something that goes deeper than training and natural. Instinctive understanding of how notes fit together, how the space between sounds carries just as much feeling as the sounds themselves. He taught himself slowly, playing alone in his room after school while the house was quiet. He never used books or videos. He just listened and tried and listened again until something clicked. He never played to impress anyone. He played because it was the one place in his entire life where he did not have to be careful. No performance. No measuring his words. Just the sound, and whatever was sitting heavy in his chest that day, and the honest space between the two. When applied, the weight lifted, not completely, not permanently, but enough to breathe, enough to feel like himself. By the time he was 18, people who heard him by accident would go quiet without realizing it. Not politely quiet. Actwejikit, the kind of stillness that falls over a person when something real reaches them before they have time to put their guard up. A neighbor through a shared wall. A relative visiting for the weekend. They would stop mid-sentence, mid-movement, and just listen without knowing why. He had something. He knew it. And that knowing felt like the most alive he had ever been in his life. That summer year, a music teacher at his school. A quiet, observant man named Mr. Aldi, the kind of teacher who spent his career watching for the thing in students that the grades never captured heard. Adam played at a small school event and pulled him aside afterward. You should perform, A-side simply, not for a prize. Not to impress anyone, just so people can hear what you carry. Adam prepared for 3 weeks. Not a cover song, not something borrowed from someone else. Something completely original, built from everything that lived in him, shaped by hands that had taught themselves to speak in a language no one had shown them. He practiced until the piece stopped being something he played and became something he simply released. The night of the regional youth showcase, the hall was half full. Folding chairs, a modest stage, a panel of judges at a table near the front with papers and pens, and the distracted energy of people who had already sat through several performances that evening. Adam walked out, sat down, took one slow breath, and began to play. For almost 2 minutes, the room shifted. Something in the quality of the sound reached past the noise and the restlessness. A few people leaned forward slightly. The air changed in that small, almost invisible way it changes when something genuine enters a space. Then one of the judges leaned sideways and began whispering to the person beside him. Nothing cruel, nothing deliberate, just distracted. Like a notification had pulled his attention and the stage in front of him had become background. A phone lit up in the third row. Someone shifted in their seat. A teenager near the side wall laughed at something on a screen, not at Adam, not directed at him, just near him. Just during the most unguarded moment Adam had ever offered another human being, Adam finished the song. The applause was polite, brief. The kind of applause that says, "Thank you for your time," and closes like a door. He walked off the stage, went outside, and stood in the parking lot alone under a pale sky. He did not understand what he was feeling yet. It was not rage. It was not embarrassment exactly. It was something quieter and more permanent. The specific feeling of having placed the most honest part of yourself in front of the world, and watching the world simply look away. He had not failed. He had not been rejected. He had been unnoticed. And somehow, that was the wound that never closed, he told himself. I'll play again when I'm ready. 20 years passed. The guitar moved with him through every apartment, every city, every new chapter of his adult life. He never sold it, never left it behind. He restrung it twice over the years. Not to play, but because letting the strings rust felt like admitting something he was not ready to admit. Keeping it was not hope. It was something harder to name. Like holding a photograph of a version of yourself you are not ready to fully let go of. Evidence that once, before the world taught him to be careful, something real and extraordinary had lived inside him. And then on a cold Saturday morning in November, at a small community repair cafe where Adam volunteered every second weekend, an older man walked in carrying a cracked violin case. His name was Edmund. He sat down to wait his turn. Calm eyes. Worn coat, the unhurried stillness of a man who had made peace with most things. After a few minutes, without introduction, without any particular reason, he began to hum. Not a recognizable song, just something slow and honest that moved through the room the way real music moves, without trying to impress, without asking for anything, just present. Adam's hands went still over the radio he was fixing. That sound reached him before his walls had time to rise. Before 20 years of careful silence could step in and remind him who he had decided to be. He sat very still, and something in his chest. Something he had padlocked just as carefully as that closet door shifted. Just slightly. Just in a hoop. When Edmund stood to leave, His violin case bumped the edge of a table and slipped. Adam caught it before it hit the floor. Their eyes met in that brief accidental way. Adam handed it back. Edmund nodded, and then he looked at Adam, not a glance, not polite acknowledgement, a real look, the kind that sees past the surface a person has spent years carefully constructing. You play, don't you? Not a question. Recognition. Adam felt something tightened in his chest. Not anymore, he said. Flat. Practiced. The answer that had become automatic over so many years, it no longer felt like a lie. Edmund nodded slowly. No argument. No wisdom offered. He reached into his coat pocket, set a small card on the table beside Adam's tools, and walked out the door without another word. Adam looked at the card for a long time before picking it up. A date, an address, a small community concert, 6 days away. Nothing else. No pressure, no expectation written anywhere on it. Just a door left open by a stranger who was wise enough to know that some people can only walk through a door when no one is standing there watching them decide. That night, Adam put the card on the kitchen counter. Not the trash. Not a drawer. The counter, where he would see it every morning. He told himself it meant nothing. He told himself that 3 more times over the next 2 days, with decreasing conviction. On the second day, he stood in front of the closet for 4 full minutes before opening it. He lifted the guitar case out with both hands, set it on the kitchen table, and sat across from it while he finished his coffee. He did not open the case. He just let it sit there, like a conversation he was not ready to start, but was no longer willing to keep avoiding. On the 3rd day, he opened the case, ran one hand along the neck of the guitar. The familiar weight of it, the worn frets under his fingertips. He closed the case again and went to work, but something had already changed in a way he could not undo. On the 4th day, he called Leon. Not to explain everything, just. He needed to say something true out loud, to another human being, because 20 years of silence has a weight to it that becomes unbearable in small invisible ways. And sometimes the only way to lift even a corner of it is to let one honest sentence out into the open air. I used to play guitar, Adam said. I was good at it. A pause. Then Leon, in his big, warm, and perfect way. Then what are you waiting for? Man, seriously. What are you waiting for? Adam didn't answer. Said goodnight. Hunk. Up. But those 5 words, I was good at it, did something to him he had not expected. Because for 20 years he had quietly rewritten his own talent out of his story, replaced it with doubt, convinced himself, in the slow, careful way a person convinces themselves of comfortable lies, that maybe he had never been that good, that the feeling of having something real had been vanity. Self-deception. Saying it out loud made it real again, and that was almost harder than the silence had been. On the 5th day, he picked up the guitar and played for 2 hours straight. His hands remembered before his mind did. That was the part that undid him, not the sound, but the memory in his hands. 20 years, and his fingers still knew where to go. The body does not forget what the heart once loved, no matter how long the mind tries to move on. The music came back slowly at first, like a river finding its old path after years of being redirected somewhere smaller. Then, with more confidence. Then, with a depth and an emotional weight that surprised even him. He played things he had never written down, pieces assembled from 20 years of silence and early mornings, and locked closet doors, stored somewhere deep without him realizing, waiting for the moment his hands were finally ready to release them. When he stopped, he was sitting on the floor, guitar in his lap, the apartment completely quiet around him. He was not crying. He was something past crying, something quieter and more permanent. The feeling of a man who has just remembered something true about himself that he spent a very long time pretending not to know. The night before the concert, he drove to the address on the card. Parked across the street, did not go inside. Just sat in the dark and looked at the building through the windshield. A small community hall. String lights warm through the windows. 80 seats, at most. The kind of place that does not require credentials, does not ask about your past, does not need you to have a story ready before you walk in. He sat there for 40 minutes. His mind ran through every reasonable argument. No one asked him to perform. He wasn't prepared. He hadn't played publicly in 20 years. It was too late. It was too small. It didn't matter either way. That last one stopped him cold. It didn't matter either way. He turned that sentence over, and sitting there in the dark, he realized he did not believe it did matter. Not to an audience, not to Edmund, not to anyone watching from outside. It mattered to him. And that, after 20 years of telling himself his gift only had value if the world noticed and approved, was the most important thing he had ever understood about himself. Edrob Holmes set out his clothes and slept, for the first time in longer than he could remember, without the weight in his chest. The concert hall was warm and easy. Local musicians, modest talent, genuine heart in every performance. Edmund played near the end viol, slow, completely his own. And the room gave him its full attention without being asked. Afterward, Edmund found Adam near the back, asked what he played. Adam said guitar. Edmund mentioned the spare in the back room, available for anyone, then walked away for tea. Simple as that. No ceremony, no moment made of it. Adam got the guitar, carried it to the edge of the stage, not the center, whose T-edge. The room was still moving around him. Conversations, laughter, the comfortable noise of people who had just shared something good together. He looked down at the guitar, played the first note, and the room changed. Not dramatically, no gasp, no sudden silence, but something shifted, the way air shifts when a window opens in a closed room. Conversations softened. Heads turned, not because someone told them to, because something real had entered the space, and the human instinct toward genuine things did what it always does. He played for 7 minutes. Everything he had carried for 20 years was in those 7 minutes. Every morning in front of the locked closet, every drive to work in silence. Every time he had swallowed the music back down and told himself it was fine, that he was fine, that none of it mattered. It was all there. And the room heard it. By the 4th minute, there was no more noise, just the music and the stillness that forms around something true. When he finished and looked up, the silence lasted exactly long enough to mean something real. Then the applause came, unhurried, warm. The kind that sounds like we heard you, not performance applause. Not politeness, just people responding honestly to something honest. He stepped off the stage. Edmund shook his hand. There. It is. An older woman approached him quietly. She said his playing reminded her of her father, a man who had carried a gift his whole life and almost never shared it, always waiting for the right moment, always telling the family he would play for them properly one day, when he felt ready. He passed, she said quietly, with all of it still inside him. She wasn't saying it to wound him. She was saying it because it was true, and because truth, offered gently, is sometimes the most generous thing one human being can give another. Adam stood with that for a long moment, said nothing, but something in him understood exactly what she meant. Because he had almost been that man. He'd almost taken everything to the grave without ever letting it breathe. He drove home slowly, walked down the hallway, stopped in front of the closet one last time. This time, he did not look away. He opened it, lifted out his own guitar, carried it to the kitchen table, and set it down in the open. No padlock. No case. Who's the guitar part of the room now? Part of his lab. He made tea and sat beside it in the quiet for a long time. Not playing, just letting it exist in the open, in the light, where it had always belonged. In the morning, it was still there. He picked it up before he made his coffee, and applied. Not for a stage, not for anyone's approval, not waiting for the world to finally notice, just for the same reason he had played at 18, alone in a quiet house, before fear had time to teach him to hide. Because it was the truest thing inside him, and it had waited long enough. There is a gift inside every person that does not disappear with time. It only goes quiet. It waits through the years of fear, through the mornings of doubt, through every moment we decide it is safer to stay small. One moment of not being seen is not a verdict on what you carry. The world will miss things. People will be distracted. Applause will sometimes be polite and forgettable. None of that makes the gift smaller. None of that earns it a lock in a closet. What you carry was given to you for a reason, and the greatest loss is not failing in front of the world. The greatest loss is never trying at all. Do not wait until you are ready. You will never feel ready. Begin anyway.